This week on the Lost Gardens of Chateau de Rosieres, we're moving a 230-year-old chalet from the French Alps to the grounds of our medieval chateau in Ardèche. While Mark was working on the incredible greenhouse restoration project that you've been watching for a few weeks, he realised that he was going to need a garden shed somewhere near here to keep all his tools in. But instead of going to the garden centre like any normal person, he thought he would get something a little bit different. The garden shed we actually ended up with was inspired by the wife of one of France's most prominent individuals, and Mark is going to tell you all about it.
Empress Joséphine de Beauharnais, the wife of Napoleon, was a very keen horticulturalist. She was really passionate about all the plant novelties that were brought back by plant hunters from all parts of the world. And she had the most beautiful garden built at her chateau in La Malmaison. And in this chateau, she had some cattle to maintain the grounds, to cut the grass because the lawnmowers weren't invented yet. To keep these cattle, she hired a couple of Swiss shepherds that she naturally housed into a Swiss chalet. The idea behind building a Swiss chalet was to be able for visitors of the garden to travel around the world whilst visiting the garden. So some people would build Chinese pagodas, some people would have Roman ruins, and Joséphine de Beauharnais had the Swiss chalet, which means that you would feel like traveling to Switzerland whilst visiting the garden in La Malmaison. These garden buildings were known as follies. They could take all sorts of shapes. So it started with Roman temples or ruins, and then with the accounts of explorers that were traveling the world, it could take the shape of African houses or Chinese pagodas or various things from everywhere in the world. We liked this idea of traveling without leaving our estate, and that's why we decided to replicate the idea of building a folly in our garden. And the folly doesn't have to be purely ornamental, so we decided to also make it useful and have a garden shed folly. Just like Joséphine, we chose to have a Swiss chalet in our garden. One of the reasons is because they are reasonably easy to find and they're easy to disassemble and reassemble. The chalet we got is actually called a mazo. It wasn't an inhabitation chalet, it was more used as a granary or an outside safe that was quite a small building outside of the main house. I found this mazo in an online advert and I hired some carpenters to come and help me disassemble and reassemble it. Because it was located on somebody else's property, we weren't able to film the disassembly, but we are going to show you how we reassembled it in our garden and how fast it went.
Late last December, Mark travelled to the heart of the French Alps to visit a man who was selling the traditional mazo barns on his land. Unwanted by their owner, Mark was wowed by their beauty and history and decided that he wanted one for his folly in the gardens of the Chateau de Rosieres. Along with a group of local carpenters, Mark disassembled the mazo in under a day, and early the next morning they arrived with their lorry at the chateau with the now flat-pack historic chalet on the back. Because of recent rains, the ground was completely sodden and they were unable to manoeuvre the truck through the garden. Mark, Sebastian and Matisse were therefore obliged to move all of the wood through the chateau's historic entrance arch using the much smaller Ranger and by hand. For the base of the mazo, which we had prepared in advance, we used an existing medieval wall that we reinforced and added a fourth corner to. When the carpenters disassembled the mazo, they carefully marked each piece of timber with chalk to enable them to reassemble it with ease. Some of the timbers still had numbering from the original construction because they were designed to be easily movable. But over the years, some of the timbers had been replaced, so Sebastian and Matisse needed to use their own system. The mazo sits on two ski-shaped timbers and is then built from the bottom up using interlocking joints and wooden plugs. No nails or screws or glues are needed. This interlocking design was widely used in the construction of chalets for centuries, as we can see in this book from the early 19th century.
Looks just like IKEA, or Lego, as you want.
Are you excited, Mark?
Very.
These two long timbers show that the mazo was once a single-storied building with a low roof, and that at some point in its history another floor was added. This is also shown by the change in timber above this point. Before going any higher with the outer walls, the intermediary floor needs to be installed, just as it starts to rain.
concept.
So Margot, how do you feel that this is 6 years younger than your whole country?
It's a little mind-boggling. It's built in 1790.
And that also means, as Mark was just saying, that the trees themselves are even older than that.
Yeah, that is so cool.
Looks really good. I think the chickens would like to have one too. This is the plank of the top of the gable, and there's a date on it which says March 1790. And there are some initials or FLIO, which could have been the builders or the persons who it was commissioned by. So yeah, and the FFZ. It's really cool. I love that.
C'est juste que tu mets de la mauvaise volonté.
This is the old insulation that was between the planks. It's newspapers. Even before that, they would have used moss probably to make sure it was completely airtight.
While they were assembling the roof, the carpenters realised that the mazo was sitting a little askew, so they asked Mark to nudge it back square using the digger.
La pièce maîtresse qu'il faut filmer. Fais gaffe aux petits poinçons. Hein.
The masterpiece, solid oak, very heavy.
Oulala. Voilà.
Elle est belle celle-là. Hop. C'est chouette la porte.
Ouais, bah,
Oh, tu vois, il y a... like new. Hop, fermé. Bon bah, bravo hein.
après, je vais faire